Hello, namaste, and welcome everybody. This is your host Garvit Jain here, a researcher in social sciences with JRF, right? So, what I'm going to do is that I have done a significant amount of research and study on gender, on third gender, transgender, LGBTQ phenomena, its evolution, its reasons, the arguments given in order to support it and its impact on the society, the gender fluidity, right? The people changing their genders and the variety of gender on the gender spectrum, the difference between the sex and gender. And I have, read not only academically but even out of my passion and curiosity, right? Adventurously, right? Everything, each and everything in great detail, many a times. But now what I'm thinking is to delve into this topic deeper and publicly, like sharing my knowledge with the public. And I'm not claiming that I'm completely right. It's gonna be a sort of debate and discourse sort of thing. Because if you think that I'm wrong at some point of time and you have the valid reasons, if you are an advocate of the transgenderism or LGBTQ community, then come forward. We would have a debate right here only. So, starting, I'm taking the ascendancy of Trump to the post of U.S. president, and now his recent executive orders. I'm taking it as a nudge or as a trigger, to finally come on YouTube, bringing a series wherein I would be discussing this whole gender debate in great detail in an organized and orderly manner. So we would be deconstructing this whole debate, taking its various aspects one by one in the further or subsequent videos. So this is what the news is all about. So this is the first video. If you are totally a novice but you have some interest in you to know like what is this debate all about, and if you are somebody like who is interested in knowing about transgenderism, because see, my main reason, like my main emphasis is, you are a human, right? You are a social being. You live in a society. Perhaps you might be having a family, your own children, sons, daughters, sisters, brothers, parents, and they all are exposed to the social media. They all are exposed to the liberal forces. Let us call it societal forces, be it conservative or be it liberal, right? So they might actually transition to some other sex which they were not assigned at birth, which they are actually and biologically not, right? So what happens is that just for the sake of pragmatism, also if you think selfishly also, you should be knowing about what is this creature called transgender, and what is it all about, what is going on out there in the world. Because if there is something going on in US, then sooner or later it's gonna impact the people living in India as well. We tend to follow them a lot. So I give the example of a boy who is from Delhi. He is around 20 years old, and 2 years back he transitioned into a girl, and now he dresses up like a girl, walks like a girl, talks like a girl, does everything like a girl, takes the privileges that are reserved for the women, right? Going through the metros, getting into the women specific washrooms or the sports rooms. So this is all now gonna have some consequences on the societal structures, right? On the way the society works, right? Thus Trump is so right while saying that this whole transgenderism and the wave of gender fluidity, it poses a threat to the safety and security of women. So uh, let me not go deeper into it now in the beginning, because now what we are going to do is, on the screen you can see I've opened an article from India Today, and we would be reading it so as to get a hang of what the Trump's gender policy is like, what is it all about, so as to get a bird's eye view of what is it like. So Yeah, here we go. Donald Trump's gender policy, what his executive order means. Donald Trump's executive order redefines sex as strictly male or female, impacting transgender rights nationwide. The policy faces criticism from experts and advocates, with legal challenges likely to follow. Okay, so before starting, let me tell you one thing. As I have told you, like I have done a significant amount of research, and there was this case ongoing in the Supreme Court some time back regarding the marriage rights to be granted to the homosexual people, to the people who are willing, who are going to marry with the person coming from the same gender. So that is basically same sex marriage, right? So there was this debate going on in the Supreme Court, which led to the five judge bench deciding the matter. Eventually the matter went in the favor of the government or the mainstream society or the heterosexual people, and not in the favor of the trans community. But the judge, Justice Chandrachuru, who also happened to be the CGI at that point of time, he supported the trans community, right? And I went through that 360 pages long document wherein he mentioned the word transgender many a times, and he also mentioned the words such as kinner, hijra, right, many a times. Does not, and at the same place, like putting an oblique transgender, oblique inner, oblique um, other names like lgbtq, does not differentiating between the transgenders and the kinner community, and hence committing a big mistake. This ambiguity, ambivalence, confusion, or misconception is disastrously harmful for the society and for the policymakers, because they are not striking a difference, an objective difference between the transgender community, between the lgbtq plus, because there is a whole spectrum, right, of these new creatures on the one hand, and the kinner and the hijra community on the other hand, who are who have the biological basis, who are basically the intersex people and have the biological basis to claim the non-binary status, and thus have been culturally understood as a community, right? So this is the basic difference, because a person, if he is a gay, then it is not his biological nature, it is what like he feels like. But if somebody is kinnar or hijra, then he has the biological right to claim that identity, and our society, Indian society, have traditionally, historically, culturally granted them that status. It is another thing that they are marginalized. We will be discussing it in the further video. So let me tell you, like this difference, right? What happens is that in the whole discourse and narrative, the policymakers, the media persons, the advocates of the trans rights, the people discussing it in the public forum, and the students, the common people, they actually take this umbrella term, take this blanket term, and applies on all set of non-binary people. But they forget that there is a section of non-binary people who have the biological right to claim this non-binary status, who have the biological right, who are basically the intersex people. And on the other hand, there are nowadays a large number of people who don't have the biological right, but it is based on their psychology, on their feelings, on the societal forces, extra liberal and hyper woke culture they are exposed to, right? So yeah, that is what it is. Anyways, not stretching it further, let me read it completely. Uh, Donald Trump's executive order redefines sex as strictly male or female, impacting transgender rights nationwide. So here I am not with the Donald Trump completely, though I like admire him, but not completely, because when he says that it is strictly either male or female, then he misses on the trans on the third gender people. So there's a difference between the transgender and the third gender. Third gender is who are not distinctively either male or female, who are basically the intersex people, who the people in Bharat, the Bharatiya culture recognize as Hijra or Kinnar community. So there are these people also, and they are very minuscule in size. Their proportion is very low, right? So but nevertheless they do exist and they should have been recognized, right? If they are existing in India, they must be there in US as well, and they should be recognized and acknowledged, right? So here it is where I uh, disagree with Trump for not being uh, inclusive, where he should have been inclusive. Nevertheless, he clearly states that we would not be recognizing, acknowledging, and normalizing the LGBTQ thing, and the transitioning thing is a commendable step. So, Donald Trump's executive order redefines sex as strictly male or female, impacting transgender rights nationwide. The policy faces criticism from experts and advocates, with legal challenges likely to follow. In short, Trump signs order redefining sex as male or female. Order impacts federal documents and policies. Order not yet fully effective requires further action. Okay. In executive order, Trump signed on his first day back in office offers a new federal government definition of the sexes that could have a major impact on transgender people nationwide. Okay. The order calls for the federal government to define sex as only male or female and for that to be reflected on official documents such as passports and policies such as federal prison assignments. Alright. As for federal spending, it's not clear what his vow to end broader gender classifications will mean on the ground. Mhm. Many of the provisions are likely to be challenged in court. Well, they can. Here's a look at the order, defining male and female based on cells that don't exist at conception. Alright. The order declares that there are just two sexes, male and female. It rejects that people can transition from one gender to another or to be considered something other than male or female, such as non binary, which describes people who don't identify as strictly men or women or intersex. Okay, okay, all right. The position reflects what many social conservatives have called for and conflicts with what the American Medical Association and other mainstream medical groups say, that extensive scientific research such as sex and gender are better understood as a spectrum than as an either or definition. Alright. Trump's order says it is intended to protect women's spaces from those who self identify as women. Well, that is so very true. Suppose if I am a boy, right? And today I am a boy, I am blessed with the body traits, physical traits specific to a boy, the genitals specific to a male. And tomorrow I feel like transitioning into a female, so I undergo some surgeries, right, some treatments, right, and there happens the hormonal changes in my body, and superficially I change my appearance and look like a girl, dresses up like a girl, and then take the privileges reserved for the girls or the women if I use their uh, spaces, for example the bathrooms, the washrooms, right, then the changing rooms, right, then what would be the impact on the society, on women, on their safety and security, right? Because internally I'm a male. You cannot completely change that maleness from me, that manliness from me, right? So at many of the times the genitals are not removed, and even if the genitals are removed, then also it doesn't mean that you have changed my male nature, right? So it is a threat to objectivity, it is a threat to the objective segregation of the society between the men and the women, which the woke people have to understand. Anyways, reading it further, what does it say? Trump's order says it is intended to protect women's spaces from those who self identify as women. That is very true. It defines the sexes in an unconventional way based on the reproductive cells, large cells in females or small ones in males, and it suggests that humans have those cells at conception. Okay. Biologists say that's a problem because egg cells develop many weeks later and sperm cells are produced at puberty, not at conception. Mhm. At that stage, sexual differentiation has not started to take place, said Carl Bergstrom, a University of Washington evolutionary biologist. I can't see any logically coherent way to interpret the definition in this executive order given the addition of the phrase at conception. Well, the definition, personally speaking, might be incoherent, might be wrong, and should have been designed, in a better way. Well, Trump is working really impatiently. What we can infer from the streak of orders that he has signed, and I suppose that I believe that there would be the necessary correction and amendments in the coming future. Anyways, moving on to Bergstrom. Bergstrom said a scientific explanation could specify sex chromosomes, but the executive order seems to deliberately avoid that, presumably to sidestep the range of variations that include intersex people who have physical traits that don't fit typical definitions for male or female categories. Alright, well, that's too much of biology, huh? What parts of the order are in effect? Okay, the order has been signed, but much of it requires more federal action. Nothing is in effect, said Harold Greensmith, Deputy Director of Policy at the Transgender Law Center. The executive order tells one White House staff member to draft a bill for Congress within 30 days that would codify the definitions into law. Federal agencies must tell the president within 120 days what they have done to comply with the order. Some parts might require going through the regulatory process of passing new laws. Omar Gonzalez Pagan, a Lambda legal lawyer, said on a call with journalists this week that the order does not change current law but rather creates a clear signal and roadmap of where this administration's policies lie when it comes to transgender people. Okay. State laws on participation in sports, bathroom use, gender affirming care, and other issues are not directly affected. What does it mean for federally issued documents? The order calls for passports, visa, and global entry cards to reflect the administration's definition of sexes. The State Department, which is responsible for passports, declined to answer questions about the current state of policy. The order suggests getting rid of the X designation that has been available on passports since 2021 after a long legal battle waged by an intersex activist. A department web page that described how people could change their gender marker was taken offline, and Chase Strangio, an ACLU lawyer, said it's unlikely that any new application to change the gender marker on a passport will be approved. What about transgender federal prison inmates? The border contains specific details on how it should apply in federal prisons, which house nearly 2300 transgender inmates, about 1.5% of the total population. It calls for housing transgender women. There are more than 1500 in men's prisons, and for halting gender affirming medical care. At least two transgender inmates have had government funded gender affirming surgery in recent years as a result of court orders. A large number have received other treatment such as hormones. Sarah Wardlow, legal director at human rights campaign set court orders that grant inmates access to treatment remain in effect even if federal policy changes. The ACLU says it's heard from some defense lawyers that incarcerated transgender women were being moved into isolation or being told they would be transferred to men's prisons. The Bureau of Prisons did not respond to questions about whether inmates are to be moved. So you see, like personally speaking, what chaos and disorder it can, wreak. It will wreak havoc on the social fabric of the societies in the prisons or in any place, at any place, anywhere. We see there is a segregation between the men and women, and which is at times very logical, rational, functional, and commonsensical. For example, in prisons, if we don't have this segregation, then it would pose threat to the safety and security of women. Like bluntly speaking, they would be vulnerable to the harassment, molestation, or even rape by the men. Now, if a man who has transitioned into a woman undergoing some surgeries, taking gender affirming medical care, either from private hospital or the public hospital, does some crime and goes into the prison, right, and is taken to the cell reserved for the women, right. So the women who are the biological women in the prison now would face real practical threats from that trans woman who was and who is actually a man, right. So I'm not saying that you cannot change what God has created. I'm not going into this debate of whether because I am being agnostic here. I don't know if God exists or not. I'm not saying that God made men and women. God created two genders or not. Let me be agnostic, if not atheist here. But it is a common sense, it is a basic sense that a man cannot become a woman and a woman thus cannot become a man. I agree that a man might have, and we all do have, some properties, traits, tendencies, inclinations, dispositions associated with women. At the same time, similarly, women also have some choices, passions, right, interests, hobbies, decisions, traits, qualities, characteristics generally associated with men, and that is completely okay. So I agree that there might be a spectrum, like uh, a man to what extent, like a male could be less manly, another could be more manly, but at the end of the day both are men, right. Biologically both are men because of the hormones, chromosomes, and the genitals given to them. So it doesn't mean that a male who is less of a man, like a male who is less manly is less of a man. No, he is equally a man, but it is just that he is less manly. And if he has the choices uh, generally associated with the women, like he's into painting, dancing, singing, and art and craft, if he talks and walks and acts like a woman, doesn't necessarily mean that he should transition into a woman, is all what I'm basically trying to say. If it happens, if it gets the validation, uh, approval, and acceptance of some members of the society or the administration and government, then it will wreak havoc on the society, on the societal organization, on the societal structure, on the way the society functions, as this example demonstrates, as this example very well depicts, because he would go into the prison reserved for the woman. If he is a trans woman, he would go into the prison reserved for the women only, and now cause threat to the real biological women, right? Anyways, moving further, we what we say is, will this stop medic aid from paying for gender affirming care? Medic Aid, a joint federal state health insurance program for lower income people, covers gender affirming care in some states. Former President Joe Biden's administration adopted a rule to make it do so nationally. Former President Joe Biden's administration adopted a rule to make it do so nationally. Okay, but judges put that. Okay, so far it's unclear what might happen to the coverage in states that choose to offer it. Lindsay Dawson, director of LGBTQ health policy at the Health Policy Research Organization KFF, said that eliminating the coverage where it's already in place would likely involve a long process and, like others, would probably face court challenges. Okay, so nevertheless, in the end, like I think that there is some problem with the news, like the way the story is, uh, told here. Nevertheless, by and large, we have understood quite well what is the debate all about. So, in the ensuing videos, in the subsequent videos, what we're doing is addressing the transgender debate, or we would be trying to refuting, giving a rebuttal to the arguments marshaled by the advocates of transgenderism or same-sex marriage or non-heteronormativity, right? And let me give that caveat, let me give that disclaimer again very clearly and emphatically, that I am somebody who might be against or who does not encourage or support the transgender movement, right? This LGBTQ thing, but I am not somebody who does not support the uh, real biological non-binary community such as Hijra Kinnar community. I acknowledge them, and I think that they should be, and only they should be clubbed under the term third gender, and they should have the necessary rights addressed, right? They should have the affirmative actions, you know from the government side, and they should be provided with the security net, and they are real marginalized people and should be given the benefits of the state welfare programs, and there should be a distinction, a distinguishment, between these two set of people, and this is what I feel, right? And yeah, that is it. We will be taking it further. Just give your thoughts, share your ideas which are there in your mind. If there is any specific aspect you want to be addressed, then please pin it. I would pin it in the comment section, then put it in the comment section down below. And it is very necessary, it is very essential, because we don't know that people living in India, they are getting influenced by what's happening in the US and in the metropolitan cities, and undergoing the surgeries, the changes, or thinking to change their gender. But it would have psychological impacts not only for them, but also for the family, for the society, and the nation at large. We are to save our demographic dividend, we are to utilize it to the fullest extent possible. Let us be what we are, truly, completely. I am all for the gender equality for men and women. But this thing, this LGBTQ thing, is it's high time is to be understood clearly, right?